Hello guys, welcome to my channel. I hope everything's okay in your life. In this video you will find an updated version of series I prepared in the previous years. You're in luck for listening to the explanation because I felt the need to quickly discuss the content of the video. Each video will feature an interview with a class master about either the succession or awakening versions of a class. All videos, including the older ones, will be available in the playlist you see on the screen. You can find the link of the playlist in the pinned comment section. The purpose of this video series is to help you understand the basic role of the class within the game. I must clarify that it is not a deeply detailed guide. You will watch an interview in a conversational style aimed at answering the fundamental questions of those interested in playing a class. The class masters featured are experienced players who have dedicated thousands of hours to their class and to the Black Desert Online. You may recognize some and not the others, but unfamiliarity does not make them bad players. All the class masters mentioned have proven themselves in Black Desert Online world. Please be respectful when sharing your thoughts. Enjoy watching. Hello guys, welcome. Today's guest is Pig, CPCP. Welcome Pig, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Thank you so much. Today we will talk about Awakening Striker. Before we start the Striker details, may you please introduce yourself? Who are you? Where are you from? Which server are you playing at?
Yeah, so I go by Pig or CPCP, and I am from Canada, so the West, and I play on the NA server.
Thank you. How did you find out of BDO and what caught your interest to stay in BDO?
I was actually introduced to BDO in like 2017 or early 2018 by a friend, but I never actually played it until like late 2018, 2019-ish. And I kind of was brought back to BDO from Twitch streams, and Lakari was one of them.
Have you ever taken a break from playing BDO? If so, what motivated you to come back?
Yeah, so a lot of the time when a new MMO comes out, I'll take like maybe like a month or two break. And by break, I don't mean like I am completely like off the game. It's usually just very casual, like just a couple hours a week maybe. And eventually I'll get bored and then I'll just come back to the game.
Okay. How long have you been playing the class you're currently playing? Have you tried any other classes?
So I've been playing Strikers since like late 2018 and like early 2019, I believe. I really started playing the class in 2019. It's when I was taking PvP pretty seriously. I was doing like very, very sweaty PvP, Node Wars and Siege and whatnot. I usually do try out other classes very briefly. I haven't really spent too much time on any other class except for maybe Awakening Corsair. But that's about it.
Thank you. What sets the class you play apart from the other classes? What is special on Striker?
Its kit is basically like an anti-magic class, is what it was designed as. There's not really that many classes like that. It's kind of designed as like a counter to casters back in the day. It sort of still fills that role today, not quite as much just due to like the damage. But yeah, it's a lot tankier than most classes. It's got 2 grabs. It has like pretty decent self healing, no percentage heals, but it can like top itself back up after a little bit.
Is your class evasion or damage reduction or both playable? Why?
So usually strikers played as evasion, but there are times and matchups where DR is preferable because some classes have like extremely high accuracy modifiers or space accuracy or whatever the case might be. And they can kind of make the evasion not really matter. And so if you're a DR on the striker, you'd be tankier versus evasion. But for the most part, most matchups, evasion is preferred.
What is your current gear score? Do you rush your geek progress or you just type of like a take it easy?
I'm like 737. I'm either 737 or 739. I'm not a very like ahead of the curve geared kind of player. I usually do the minimum to be like, okay, my gear is good enough to fight, even like the hard cap players. And then I kind of stop there until the hammer release. And so with the hammer release, I've been going pretty hard, trying to finish off my debos and then get my whalings.
Maybe it's because you're playing Striker, because in Striker, even with like 20, 30 gear score below your opponent, you can still easily kill them. Maybe it's because of the class design.
Yeah, it depends on the matchup for sure, but there's definitely some matchups where if somebody's like 750 or 760 gear score, but they are a glass class, so they're just like inherently squishy, then if I play better than they do and it's not like super favored to them, then I can still kill them. Whereas like if I fight like a 760 gear score Valk or something, then you can really feel the difference in gear, and then it's kind of a struggle. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Is your class newbie friendly? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate its difficulty? If you want, you can just separate Succession Awakening and compare them.
So I would say to get into Striker, it's super super new friendly, new player friendly. At the higher end, is definitely a lot more work to see like even like a third of the results of like some of the classes that you'd consider meta. But just as like a beginner class, it's very very friendly. And as for Awakening Succession, I would say is a little bit more need like a little bit more experience, especially in a 1v1, but Succession can do extremely well, even better than Awakening can in the 1v1 scene. But aside from that, it's usually just Awakening is the play. There, I would say Succession's like base floor to getting into the class for PvP is higher than Awakening's.
Thank you. So we talk in general about Striker. Let's dive a little bit deeper. Let's dig in. We are curious about your thoughts on the PvE situation of the class you're playing. Could you provide us with detailed information separately, early, mid, and end game Awakening Striker?
Yeah, so Awakening Striker does really, really well at low end spots. It does really well at mid game spots. And then once you start getting into higher end spots, due to the high AP cap, Striker doesn't have any built in like AP buff, and his AP is also very low. Like his base AP is very low. So you don't really have ways to get close enough to that 1.1k AP cap like some other classes do, and it starts to struggle in places like Ulukita, where like there's like places where like Tungrad Ruins, practically ungrindable on Awakening Striker. It's just you can't get close enough to the cap, and you can't choose the mechanic properly. And then there's things like Yarzid Highlands, where the cap is still 1.1k. You're not gonna get insane levels of trash. It's comfy there, but I get like 36k, maybe 37k there, where there's some other classes, like S tier grinders are getting like 42 plus. It's definitely not a bad grinder. It's very like middle of the pack in the end game, but in the early and the mid game, I'd say it's pretty good.
So for mid game spots, as I remember, Striker has like some kind of infinite pull skill, isn't it?
Like a taunt skill, the
Yeah,
Wolf's Frenzy
taunt.
or Crouching Wolf has a taunt. Yeah, it definitely helps a lot. Thankfully for like mid game spots, it's not that necessary. And with the cooldown of like Spiral Cannon or like Flash Step, usually just going pack to pack, and if it's a mid game spot, it only takes like maybe one, two, or three skills to kill the pack, and you go next. And it's pretty chill in the mid game. Mid game and the early game with its like decent size AoEs and the pack size in the spots at that level of the game, it does pretty well.
Okay, let's talk about PvP. We all are curious about your thoughts on PvP situation of Awakening Striker. Could you provide us a detailed information separately for 1v1, 1vx, AOS, 5 vs 5, Guild League, Siege, War of the Roses?
Okay, so for I guess we'll just start from the bottom. For 1v1, or I guess I'll just start overall. Overall, Striker is it's very volatile, I guess. So for the majority of the Striker matchups and the majority of like this PvP situations you're in, you're either going to win pretty convincingly or you're going to lose very convincingly. There's no real like middle ground. Like if you have a very good striker player and you're fighting a very good class that does well against striker, chances are you're gonna convincingly lose. Like the chances to kind of overcome that are kind of slim. But that's more like I mean, it's a pretty matchup dependent thing. But like for specifics, like 1v1, I would say the class is definitely above average because it has 2 grabs. There's a lot of classes where Striker can oppress pretty easily, but there's also a lot of matchups where Striker gets oppressed pretty easily. Yeah, so I definitely say it's a bit above average in 1v1. It's kind of like a noob stomper and like a gear check class in 1v1. There's some classes that with like a good player on it can definitely like roll a striker in a 1v1. And then for 1vx, the class has a lot of, I would consider from like other people's point of view, I would consider them kind of like random. Like it has a lot of random CCs that can catch people off guard in 1vx, and that kind of makes it a little scary. But if you're ever committing to killing somebody and they're not like super squishy, it's pretty easy to peel a striker. Especially if you have a grab, because all of their damage is very predictable, it's very long-winded, their combo is like very extended, and yeah. For AOS and like any like 3v3s or like 4v4s, I think is where Striker is at its peak. I think that is by far the strongest like zone for Awakening Striker. It, like I said, has 2 grabs, it's inherently tanky, so it can peel very well. A good Striker player can be pretty hard to kill in AOS, and it has like good enough damage. There's a lot of matchups where you can kind of be like the front line for your team or look for CCs and kind of have your team play back a little bit, and you have a little bit of a cushion, especially if you're e-buffed, if you get CC'd, unless you're kind of left on an island, chances are you're not gonna have to V immediately, which is pretty big in Arena of Solar. And then for 5v5, so I like the 5v5 level is where it kind of starts to fall off. Especially depending on like the classes, the more and more people that are fighting like a striker, you can't commit, your combos, your long-winded combos to kill people. That's like the strength of striker, is its combo damage, it's a combo class. And once you start getting into situations where you can't commit to a combo, the class falls off pretty hard. 5v5s, it starts to struggle. Guild League, it starts to struggle even more. There are some like comps you can run for Guild League that can kind of synergize well with Striker, but it's never like, there will always be something better than a Striker for Guild League, always a better option. And then Node War and Siege, the class falls off extremely hard. It's, I would say, practically useless. Like you can still use it on like a flex or like anti-cannon, but there's like a million other classes that will do better than a striker and have more impact in like Node War and Siege. It's just in 2024 BDO, it's not really the meta for striker. It's like it's a combo class. Most people know that in like any large scale PvP, if your class is combo based, you're likely not going to do nearly as well or even like close to as well as any of like the more meta classes where you're killing people standing, or if you do need conditional damage and you need to get a CC, you're going to kill them in like 2 seconds when you CC, whereas striker, it's going to take a lot longer. And War of the Roses is kind of the same thing as Node War and Siege.
Thank you. So, is there a significant strong aspect of the class you're playing on, or the significant weakness? So overall, what is the strongest part that you like? What is the weakest part that you do not like?
I would say the strongest part of the class is definitely the 2 grabs. For small scale, it helps it excel a lot in small scale. Even though, like, with the way the meta is, I know me as well as some other striker players would, like, if it meant giving up a grab for more trade damage, which is where the meta is right now, that's definitely something that we would do because classes that are so striker needs to have a double KD combo to do like a respectable damage, and then even then you're likely gonna have to look for a down smash reset combo, and obviously that's not something that you can expect to do in anything other than a 1v1. So that's where it kind of struggles. I would say like one of the biggest weaknesses of the class is how susceptible it is to being slowed. If you get slowed on striker, the game is nearly unplayable. Like a lot of the time, like especially in like the higher end siege guilds, usually you can have shy buffs, so that's not really a problem. But if you're ever in a situation where you don't have shy buffs and you do get slowed on striker, it's pretty bad. I would say it's susceptibility to getting slowed is a pretty big weakness. And then obviously the more like obvious weakness for striker and other striker players will know this is the fact that you need to do a full combo for that respectable damage, and you're likely gonna have to look for a reset combo against very geared players. And then like I was saying, this like significant strong aspect of the class is grabs for sure. It's inherently tanky, and even though in like 2024 BDO, a lot of the time, if you get CC'd against the right class, you're still gonna die, you're still gonna have to V. But the inherent tankiness of the class definitely helps a lot with just not dying standing, as opposed to a lot of other classes. Yeah, I would say it's grabs and it's like inherent tankiness is definitely like the strongest aspects of the class for sure. It also has like a very cheese CC, so I think most strikers at this point know that rampaging predator into grab is extremely fast. I mean, that's probably like one of the cheesiest, strongest catches the class has right now. Whether they change it or not, I don't know. But yeah, rampaging to grab is quite massive for the class.
Are there any classes that clearly dominate your class that you are playing? And is your class dominate other classes? What are the counter matchups for you? Which classes can counter you? Which classes can counter them?
So for the classes that do extremely well against Striker would be the obvious ones are like Awakening Lawn, Awakening Ranger, Tamer, Awakening Zerker, even like Suck Zerker to a degree now because of the change they made a little bit ago. I know I'm missing some that are pretty favored. Oh, short swords in general are favored against Strikers, so like Ninja, Kuno,
What about a Dracanian?
those are so like Draconian Valk, those can be like what I would consider nearly impossible matchups if they can like not get one combo. So like if it takes, if you need to get lucky with a reset combo in order to kill them, like you need your down smashes, you need your reset combo to get a full one combo. If that's what you need in order to kill them, then the matchup becomes significantly harder because CCing a Valk and CCing an Awakening Draconia aren't hard. They can be pretty predictable. The problem is if you can't kill them, they can full heal and then the fight resets. And the problem with that is if they can't get one comboed, right? And it's very dependent on you getting a down smash reset combo and they can one combo you, then that's kind of the issue. That's kind of like the thing with 1v1s in general, and that's why strikers like favored matchups are very convincingly favored for striker because you won't be one comboed, but you'll one combo them. So it's kind of the same thing with like Track and Valk. If you can't one combo them, same thing with like Suxurk and anything that can kite you for an extended period of time and can get their HP back. If you cannot kill them in a singular combo and you are only reliant on a reset combo, that matchup becomes not favored for you anymore. And so that kind of like leans into like what the matchups that Striker does really well into. Casters, Striker dominates. DK, Striker dominates. There's a Suck Jack, Striker dominates. There's like I need to look at a class list because I could actually go through all of them. Yeah, it's very one or the other. Like these matchups that I'm mentioning, very rarely will they be like back and forth. They'll usually be very favored or very unfavored. So like Awakening Ranger versus Striker, for example, it's extremely unlikely for a Striker to win that matchup. And then you have like Striker in a 1v1 against a, Awakening Witch or something. Extremely unlikely that the Awakening Witch would win.
Thank you. Is there a mechanics or skill in your class that you would like to be buffed or nerfed?
Yeah, there's a couple things about Striker that I would like. First, there's a skill called Landslide that has a CC on it. If that was removed, that'd be great because all that does is CC cap people if you end up landing on them. If you cap somebody with the first skill in the chain, which is Twisted Collision. So just removing the CC on that would be nice. It kind of depends on what PA does with this hit change, but Striker is very susceptible to getting knocked out of their dash due to hit excel because the protection ends like almost immediately. And a lot of 2024 classes, I consider them 2024 classes, like the meta, when they're using movement skills, they're protected. Their protection is like a little bit of a linger, and that helps a ton against hit excel. So either they could increase the protection on the dash, and it's not like an overall buff to it. It's just making it so that the dash, like you don't get instantly CC'd the second your dash runs out without being able to chain in any other skill just because of, so that would be nice. And then I think one of the suggestions would be pretty good for strikers. So I'm not sure if you remember, but they were going to do a core change to Sork with their Grim Reaper. I can't remember if it actually went through. I don't think it did. But a core change for Striker would be pretty ideal because as it is right now, Awakening Striker is locked into a singular bond, and that is Spiral Cannon. And if you don't take Spiral Cannon on Awakening Striker, you're just trolling yourself. The game is like almost unplayable if you don't have your bond Spiral Cannon. And that's just because Spiral Cannon has so much of Striker's strengths in that one skill, so that if it is unprotected, that's what the bond does, the core skill, it makes it super armor. If it's unprotected, your movement and catch, like it's not even really about the catch potential, it's mainly just the movement. You can't really move without being CC'd. You're very idle. And that's obviously, BDO in these days, if your class is standing still, especially in like any kind of PvP over a 1v1, you're gonna get burned like pretty fast. So my suggestion for that would be to change the core of Spiral, and so Spiral Cannon becomes a normal super armor, and the core Spiral makes it the CC. Because I know for me and a lot of other strikers, especially anything above 1v1, the CC on Spiral Cannon doesn't really matter, and having the option to use any other bond would be amazing, especially for like large scale using a bond Skull Crusher or even like core Infernal Destruction. Like any of these other options would be better than using Spiral Cannon. Spiral Cannon is, I'm sure most strikers can agree with this. Spiral Cannon is like a pretty overloaded skill. Most of the kit's strength, or most of the striker's strength is kind of centered around that skill. Like it's a minus DP, it's a 7-second cooldown, it's a 4-guard puncture. Being able to move away from what I would consider kind of cheesy CC from Spiral Cannon, small scale, and being able to have the option to use any other core skill would be pretty nice. So I think changing the core skills would be good.
I mean, in general, when you check all other classes, it's showing that I don't want to be toxic, but sometimes we need to be toxic about our developers. Most of the classes, you have only 2 options maximum about your cores. There's 6 cores sitting on there in your class. Most of the time, 5 or 4 of them, they're being trash and they're just like shit. I cannot be. I mean,
Yeah.
even new classes, I can understand the old classes. Yes, oh, okay, you were amateur. Okay, it was outdated. But look at the new classes. They're like, there is no reason to just put it in there. They're useless. I mean, it's showing that our developers they do not know what is going on in the game in depth. Yes, there are developers. They designed this game in depth. When we just dig more and dig in, and they have no idea what's going on. That's definitely showing it. Because if I were a developer right now, I would definitely put that core changes immediately in my program, in my schedule. Because core should just offer you something. Most of the core is offering you nothing, literally nothing. Not in PvE, not in PvP. What am I going to do with that? Like, they're just sitting there. I mean, you're right about that. It's not only Striker's problem. Let's go for another question. So, can we get a brief summary, just with a few sentences? What is good parts and the bad parts of your class? Let's say that I'm an average player and I want to try Striker, Awakening. What Striker can offer me?
So Striker is definitely very noob friendly, as we talked about earlier. It has, so like the base of Striker in like a small scale, whatever, like let's say, it's just a bunch of average players. You have an average Striker versus, an average whatever. It is very likely that the Striker can do much better in like that small scale PvP than, a lot of other classes. So I'd say that's definitely like what can offer. Like, let's say, you're grinding, you grind on, whatever channel, you get dual for spotted often. Having Striker as a grinder, it's not the best grinder in late game. In your average player dual for spot, it can definitely do pretty well. Like that would be a pretty good example of of something that our striker can offer there. Its base for Awakening Striker is so low that it would allow for an average player to do pretty well against like another average player. The problem with Awakening Striker is when you start getting to that higher end, then people kind of know how the class works, how to punish it, etc., etc.
Oh, we talked about Striker enough, and let's, in the final part, talk about game itself. What are your thoughts on BDO current situation from past until now? Do you actually like the situation of BDO?
As like an avid PvPer, it's a bit disappointing where the game is now compared to where it used to be. I can remember the game in like 2019, even like 2020, or even like before that 2018. There was a lot of like banter and beef, drama between guilds, competition to be better than one another. Now in the game, aside from the removal of the deck change, which I think was terrible because they just did it in the worst way possible, there's just not that level of motivation anymore, especially for PvP. I say if you're interested in the PvE aspect of BDO, you like grinding, I think the game is definitely in a pretty good spot for those players. There's a lot of options to grind. It's very easy to catch up right now in gear. So that aspect of the game I think is doing pretty well. The PvP side of things, I mean the player base of the PvPers is definitely like shrinking, it's more shifting over to PvE players. There's just not like a motivation or incentive for people to get better at their class for the sake of PvP, which is pretty unfortunate. Old BDO, any of the veteran players that know how older BDO is with like the PvP scene, it was always exciting. Nowhere's in Siege, especially when things weren't as scripted. It was pretty fun back then. Now it's pretty scarce. I might get flack for this, but so before the deck change, if we had war declarations on other guilds and they were declared back on us, I would go to their home channels, and like the way to start PvP was very, very easy compared to how it is now. You go to their home channels, you fight one of them grinding, they call their guild, okay, nice, now you got PvP. And then, half an hour later, like, yeah guys, we're done, good fights. It's like, okay, good fights, and you go do something else. Right, I think it was pretty good for the game, especially since it's sandbox MMO. And then they removed the deck. The deck changes. It's consensual declarations now, and I think that's like kind of only part of the problem where people are just there's just no motivation to fight. There's no incentive. There's no motivation, which I get it. PvP doesn't really offer you anything. Like the only reason to PvP in BDO now is if you enjoy it, and even like the enjoyment level of PvP is I would say at probably it's like all-time low just due to the meta and the classes that are like extremely oppressive. Yeah, it's a pretty bad state for PvP, to be honest. It's pretty bad. But all the other aspects of the game I'd say are doing pretty well.
So one thing, and so in total two things. If you were in charge, what would you like to add today into the game, and what would you remove? One thing to add, one thing to remove.
That's a tough one because there's two things like that I would love for like the PvP aspect for BDO, and I think one of the main ones, which I'm hoping they do like soon. I would assume they're aware of this by now, but Node Wars for a lot of people was like the content, right? That's where the fun of PvP is. The problem with Node Wars right now is it's a PvE game in Node Wars. It's like the best way to win a Node War is to avoid hitting players and instead foreheading their base. And it's extremely, like, it is crazy unfun gameplay, but that is the way to win. And so they need to make forts insanely tanky, especially when you have annexes alive, and make annexes tankier. Because as it is right now, right, I'm part of the guild Cho Nation. In a lot of our fights, instead of like actually fighting our guild, we'll leave our base for maybe 30 seconds, and the instant response is, okay guys, they left their base, go jump into their fort, int yourselves, destroy all their structures. Now they have to play on the back foot for the next, I don't know, 30 minutes. Like, so, and that gameplay is just so uninteractive. Like, the whole point of PvP, the whole point of Node Wars should be to fight each other and not just throw your body at a fort for 20 minutes. I think it's just extremely unfun, and I hope they do something about it. And then just for like general PvP purpose, like open world, I myself enjoy open world PvP a lot. More incentive for like Arsha, the Arsha server would be very nice, whether it's like higher drop rate or like more trash while you're on the server, or like hot spots. So like spots somewhere in the game that have increased, drop rate or loot or whatever it might be, with just some kind of incentive to make people want to go to Arsha compared to the incentive that there is now, which is like 50% really isn't that much.
Okay.
And then for something to remove from the game, uh, maybe take a look at shy buffs. That'd be nice.
What advice would you like to give to newbies, returnees, and the other players in the game?
Advice, I would say, whether you're like eager to PvP or you're just eager to get like you like grinding, like your progression, don't rush, because the game, I mean, you hear people say this all the time, the game is definitely not a race. The catch-up mechanics are there and you can get geared really, really fast in the game now. But if you burn yourself out in like the first 2 months, it's kind of like pointless because it is an MMORPG. I would say take the game slow. Everybody's going to find something in the game that they enjoy. Obviously, most people are in the game because of the action combat. It's the only game that has action combat like this. But I would say to not be overwhelmed, like especially if you're new to the game. I know the game is very overwhelming. Just kind of take it slow, one thing at a time, and find what you enjoy about the game.
Thank you. We are reaching the end of the interview. Is there anything else you would like to add before we finish?
No, I just say thanks for the interview. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you so much for this interview. Guys, please check Miamigo Pig's Twitch stream. You can see the link in the right now on the screen. You will not regret, and thank you so much.
No problem, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Alright guys, do not forget, BDO is just a game. Have a nice game.